It's been fun to promote that. I've been doing some radio interviews, and the really neat thing about doing radio interviews in my house is, you try to do these when all the guys are going off to school. That's one of the prerequisites. And the other thing is, we have that dog, and he's a dachshund, thinks he's a Doberman Pinscher, and he likes to bark. So you never do know when that dog is going to start barking. Some of these radio interviews are live. That means you can't start over again. And there have been quite a few times. What I have to do, my strategy is, they have these things called dingo bones, and you give them to the dogs, and they chew on them for a while. Keeps them busy. So when I get ready to do my radio interviews, I have my cup of water, and I have my information there. I always write down who I'm talking to, because you talk to 10 radio stations in one day, and they all have different hosts, and you want to make sure you call them the right name. So I got all that stuff spread out here. And then I have a supply of dingo bones. When that dog starts barking, it happened 4 times this week. I guess it's maybe I'm training them to bark and then you get the dingo bones. I don't know. But I wish other guys would be that easy to train. But that's what I've been doing this week, is doing the radio interviews and throwing the dingo bone to our dog, who's, by the way, named Fenway, after Fenway Park. People say, why did you get a male dog? Come on. You could have gotten a female one, couldn't you? Well, this particular dog, we found out, was born on the night, October 27th, 2004, the night the Red Sox finally won the World Series after 86 years. The guys saw that, and it was like, that had to be their dog. So therefore, his name is Fenway. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit of the story of the book and of the family. My sons are 13. Excuse me, let me start with Billy, the oldest one. He's 16. Billy, stand up. And then my 13-year-old and my 7-year-old and my husband are all going to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee for a baseball tournament. And I said, okay, see ya. Not that it would be fun to go there, but it also would be nice to kind of have the house, even though Billy's there. Billy's quiet. He's not my 7-year-old, so I'm looking forward to having a little bit of time to myself this weekend. One thing about a household of guys is that there's so much competition, and there's the bathroom humor. And it gets to a point where sometimes you start thinking, well, is bathroom humor really funny? I mean, all of them seem to think it is. And you have to kind of check yourself and go, no, it's not. You got to get out of the house. Just leave, run as fast as you can, and don't look back. And the competition, just a couple weeks ago, we were coming back from church, and we were driving in our driveway, and my husband Kevin says to my youngest son Jason, the 7-year-old, Jason, I think he calls him Twerk, hop out and get the paper. And so we stop, and Jason hops out to go get the newspaper, and Kevin starts to move the car forward. And about that time, the other door opens, and David, my 13-year-old, tries to get out. Well, he does get out, and Kevin's like, whoa, and he steps on the brake, and David's foot is run over. I mean, it's not hurt, but his shoe, I think maybe his shoe's a little too big. His shoe was a little bit crunched, crushed up right there. And I'm like, what are you doing getting out of the car when Dad's starting to move it forward? I wanted to beat Jason to the newspaper. That's the way it is. They're always trying to get to something, particularly the youngest two, right, Bill? But even Billy sometimes will have that kind of thing. So when you have that competition that's always going on, and then you have, as I say, the bathroom humor and the roughhousing. When we were on vacation in San Francisco or anywhere, when we were in a hotel room, and sometimes I had a radio interview where somebody said, when we go somewhere, my family, this man had 2 sons. He said, we always get 2 hotel rooms. And I was like, geez, we can't afford 2 hotel rooms. I didn't say that on the air, but we can't afford 2 hotel rooms like that. So we're always in there with a rollaway bed, and we have all 3 guys with us. And when you take a house of testosterone and reduce it down to the size of a hotel room of testosterone, you really, really have a problem. And that's what I was experiencing that day when I was talking to that producer of that show. It's like, no, let me just, come myself. But our vacations sometimes are in hotels, and that's usually good because usually we have a camper that we go in. And my husband went through a midlife crisis a little bit ago, and he wanted that camper. And as I say, he's an Eagle Scout, and my son over there is an Eagle Scout now too, and went through Boy Scouts, and my other sons are in scouting. But this camper is not, it's not a tent, so at least I'm glad it's not a tent. It does have a bathroom, albeit very small. When we first got this camper, Billy was okay with it, but now Billy cannot stand up in the shower. And actually, you can't really stand up in any of the camper, can you? And so Billy's like, Dad, let's don't take the camper this time. But we like to take the camper now for one main reason, that's because the dog can go with us. My husband and the dog have really bonded. But really bonded, which I'll get to in a minute too. But usually, even though my husband is really into doing all the Boy Scout stuff, and we sometimes take the camper out, and the camper's written a lot about in both of these books. I think I've added some stuff about the camper in the new one. But the camper, again, it's sort of like a hotel room because it's reduced to that size. But when my husband makes reservations for a campground, there are two things he has to make sure of. Number one, you have to have a pull-through site. And that means, for those of you lucky, uninitiated camping people, you have to be able to pull the car and the camper around and not have to back it in. Because what happens when we have to back the camper in, is that we have these walkie-talkies. And these walkie-talkies, Billy gets out and has one, and Kevin has the other one. And usually, at the time we're doing this, it's about 2 in the morning. We're pulling into a campground, and everybody else has already been there for a while. They're already asleep, and here we come. Hey. Here we come, and we get out the walkie-talkies, and Kevin's like, "Okay, Billy, tell me where I need to go." Dad, and of course there's static. Dad, there's a tree and a garbage can, and come on back to the right. Now, half expecting to go breaker one now. We got us a convoy back here. So they do all that. So pull-through site makes it so you don't have to do that. So that's number one thing. Number two thing is, he makes this campground reservation. He calls them up, and the conversation's kind of like Shady Pines Campground, where nature's just outside your door. May I help you? And my husband will say, "Yeah. Y'all have cable?" And if they don't have cable, forget about the nature outside. Because ESPN is something they got to have. And actually, it's okay with me too, because the 7-year-old, let's just say, I like him to watch TV. Anyway, I'm going to read a couple of selections here, and then we'll ask some, or you'll ask some questions, or maybe you won't. We'll see. I want to just skip around a little bit. And as I say, we have, some of you have been here before, a year and a half ago, and I've got some things from this book that I like to read, but then there's some new material. And I wanted to start tonight with a selection from the new material and kind of go back in time a little bit when Kevin and I were getting married, or before we were getting married. After we had dated for 2 years, I suspected that Christmas of 1986 might bring a marriage proposal and a ring as a gift. When Kevin presented me with an exercise bike and a huge cardboard box, I thought, what a clever way it was to disguise the real gift. I giddily tore through the cardboard pieces and plastic bags and looked in every crevice of the bike itself, but I couldn't find the ring. Finally, after ripping through everything inside, I realized there was no ring. And yes, he'd actually given me an exercise bike for Christmas. I'd wanted one, but preferably not as a gift from my boyfriend. The following Easter, he gave me an Easter basket filled with plastic eggs, and in one of them, amid the jelly beans, ta-da, was the engagement ring I've been anticipating. Kind of a neat way to pop the question, even though he admitted it had been his sister's idea. When Kevin and I got married, his friends planned a bachelor party for him, as was the tradition. Bachelorette parties were not done a lot then, so I had to settle for bridal showers, which, while lovely, were not on par with the whole concept of the bachelor party. I'm glad there are now similar parties for the bride. I might not have decided to have one back then, but I would have liked having that option. I never appreciated the implication the groom's party was to celebrate one last night of his fleeting freedom before he was tied down to the old ball and chain, while the bride was supposed to stay at home and do her nails or write thank you notes, simply happy to have the grand opportunity to marry Mr. Wonderful. Did nobody stop to consider the bride would also be giving up this very same freedom and would now and forever be married to a man who would never again buy his own underwear? It's as if society thinks men getting married are embarking on a voyage on the Titanic while the bride is beginning a magical cruise of a lifetime with all-inclusive meals and massages. I beg to differ. When we first were married, there was a play in town I wanted to see, and I got tickets for it, not realizing it was the same night as the Florida State-Miami football game that Kevin wanted to watch on TV. An old boyfriend of mine, who had become a good friend, called to make sure I knew about the play because he knew I'd like it. Kevin, sensing a deal could be made here, offered the guy his ticket. He actually wanted my old boyfriend, who still looked very good by the way, to take me to the play so he could stay home and watch a football game. Let me tell you, it was an odd feeling to have a former boyfriend ring the doorbell to pick me up and have my husband answer the door. And the two of them make small talk as they waited for me. I half expected them to say things like, "Have her home early," or "Nice to meet you, sir," or "What are your plans for your future, young man?" Yet in the end, it turned out fine. I got to go to the play, and Kevin got to watch his football game. All's fair, it seems, when it comes to love and sports. And then we'll very quickly go to a little bit of what I read last year. I'm trying to get everybody included, so I don't want to leave any of the boys out here. Aren't you lucky, Bill? I'm just going to jump in the middle of this one. I ask you, how is a mom supposed to mold boys into dignified, sensitive young men with a dad like Kevin as their main role model? I love my husband, but he'd be the first to admit he's rather uncouth at times. Our sons learn some impolite habits that I don't even know they're picking up until it's too late. When David was 3, he went to a speech therapy class. One of the words he couldn't pronounce correctly was girl. He pronounced it grill. So his teacher was trying to get him to say the word spontaneously, not to just repeat it. She held up a Barbie doll of some sort and asked, "What's this, David?" David looked up and replied nonchalantly, "Hot, babe." The therapist laughed so hard he just about fell out of the chair. I've been observing the class, so I was right there in the room with them. My face turned bright red. I knew David had picked up that phrase from his father's rendition of Bing Crosby's White Christmas, which he'd been singing to the boys each morning during the holiday season that had just passed. Kevin's versions went like, "I'm dreaming of a blonde hot babe," and they picked up on it. And this is about my other 2 boys, or Jason as we get to it in a second. David came inside dripping with sweat one day after playing 3 games of basketball at the gym. "Hit the showers," I commanded as he walked by me. He stopped and looked at me dumbfounded. "But I just took one this morning," he protested. And in his mind, that explanation made perfect sense. My boys use deodorant, but I have to remind them to do this repeatedly. Having learned from his older brothers, even Jason realizes the importance of smelling decent. When he just turned 5, I had to take him with me on a stop by the home of an acquaintance I didn't know very well. I was dropping off a box of canned goods for some volunteer work I was doing. Jason went in with me, and after I had talked with a woman a few minutes, he stated that he had to go to the bathroom. "Oh no, not now," I thought. "You can wait, can't you, Jason?" I asked in my best sweet mom voice. He shook his head and started wiggling his legs like he really had to go. The woman laughed and said, "Oh, we can go right in here." She opened the door of the hall bathroom and Jason hurried in. She and I had more chit-chat as we waited for him. Seconds dragged into minutes, and I'm sure both of us were wondering what he was doing in there. Our conversation became very strained. Finally, I went to check on him. I walked down the hall and opened the bathroom door. There he was, standing in front of the mirror, rubbing on the woman's deodorant. When he saw me, he quickly pulled his shirt back down and set the deodorant stick on the sink, then put his hands in his pockets, trying unsuccessfully to look innocent. I glared at him, jammed the cap back on the deodorant, and grabbed him by his shoulders, pushing him out of the bathroom. I whispered, "Just wait till I get you in the car." I never explained to the woman what he'd been doing because I was just too embarrassed. I hope she wouldn't argue about it with her husband later that night. "Damn it, Larry, I keep telling you to put the deodorant back in the cabinet when you're done." And now I'll read the part about the dog. When the other boys found out we might be getting a puppy, David was actually pretty excited about it. Billy, on the other hand, was upset. Billy is a creature of habit. He does not welcome any kind of change that interferes with his routine. I reminded him of this personality flaw of his, saying, "Remember, you didn't even want us to have Jason when we told you we were having another baby." Just at that moment, Jason ran into the kitchen, chasing David with a shoe in his hand and screaming loud enough for the neighbors to hear, with chocolate pudding smeared on his forehead, cheeks, and hands. Billy looked at him for a second and asked me, "And your point is, Mom?" As soon as Kevin walks in the door, Jason and Fenway race to see who can get to him first. There's always been competition and sibling rivalry between my sons, but I didn't expect the dog to take part. Even though Fenway plays well with Jason, he still is jealous of him. Whenever we pick up Jason in our arms, Fenway makes this horrendous high-pitched screeching sound like a hunting dog in the woods on the trail of something. Fenway considers Kevin his master and even guards his belongings when Kevin is not at home. He sits loyally by Kevin's work boots or gym bag and growls at anyone who dares to touch it. Fenway thinks he's a lot bigger and tougher than he is. I think our house of testosterone has rubbed off on him a bit too much. "Hey," I tell Fenway, "I'm the one who found your breeder and talked Kevin into getting you. How about a little loyalty to me sometime?" But he just stares at me and blinks his big brown eyes. Yet another male I can't communicate with. Kevin signed Fenway up for an obedience course when he was about 7 months old. We entertained the idea of signing up Jason too, but the instructor wouldn't go for it. I told Kevin it was all I could do to get the guys where they were supposed to be on time, so the dog's lessons would be his responsibility. Fenway learned to sit and lie down on command, but he yelped at the other dogs so much that Kevin was asked to take him out to calm him down. He was horrible, Kevin complained when they came back from class that night. I just smiled, remembering the times I'd had to deal with misbehaving sons in public when Kevin wasn't around. Let's just suffice it to say that at the end of the course, Fenway received the award for Most Improved, which I don't think was exactly a compliment. When Fenway turned a year old, Jason wanted us to have a surprise party for him. So there we all were, crouched down behind the furniture, waiting for a dog to walk into the room so we could jump out and yell surprise, as if Fenway would have any inkling at all as to what was going on. A pet is truly a part of the family at that point. I do have to confess every now and then that I'm envious of the attention Fenway receives from Kevin. Since dachshunds are prone to back trouble, Kevin bought a special set of plastic doggy steps, one set for the couch and one for our bed, to help Fenway get on and off the furniture. Later on, we bought a new mattress that was quite a bit higher than our old one. Oh my God, Kevin yelled, Finn can't reach the bed anymore. Immediately ran downstairs to the computer to order a bigger set of doggy steps, the deluxe wooden edition. Such devotion and concern. I can't help but compare this to when I was a colossal 8 months pregnant and nobody would lend me a hand to get us off the couch. Of course, dogs are said to be man's best friend, and that makes sense if you think about it. Dogs love being fed and taking naps, and they enjoy the occasional scratch. They have a lot in common with men. And last, I'll go to my poignant moments. I had to kind of balance some things a little bit with some poignancy about what goes on with raising boys. When Billy started kindergarten, he was really eager and ready for it to finally arrive. I was looking forward to being able to spend some time alone with David as I'd been with Billy. So when I took Billy in that first morning and saw the PTA had organized a tissue tea for teary-eyed kindergarten moms, I thought, tissues? Heck, where's the confetti? Yet when Jason went for his first day of kindergarten, I completely understood the need for a tissue tea. But he didn't have any separation issues at all. When I took him to school that first day, I was ready to walk him in to give him one last hug. As I drove into the parking lot, Jason said, "Hey Mom, just let me off in the carpool lane." I looked at him in my rearview mirror. He was calmly sitting there, his backpack and lunchbox hanging over his shoulder. "Are you sure?" I asked. "The teacher said we could park and go into the school lobby." "Nope, carpool," he replied confidently. I swallowed hard and asked again if he was sure. He was. I smiled at Jason, happy he was so independent, yet I also felt an ache in my heart that I couldn't quite identify. I knew he was comfortable getting out in the carpool lane because he had been in the car with me so many times before when I dropped his brothers off at school. So I pulled over to the curb and stopped. As the safety patrol approached the car door, I tried to say a quick, meaningful goodbye. "When you get out, tell them you're in kindergarten so they can help you. Have fun at school today, sweetheart. I love you and I'll see you this afternoon." "Okay, Mom," he said as he hopped out of the SUV with a Superman backpack. Then he was gone. As I drove away, tears clouded my eyes and I grabbed a Kleenex. I knew there was no reason to cry. He was happy and healthy and ready for a new challenge. Still, I allowed myself that time alone in the car to shed some tears. It's hard to let go sometimes, to move on to another chapter of our lives, for both me and my sons. A few years ago, when Billy's voice changed, becoming deeper than I'd ever imagined, I was watching a videotape of Billy and David holding Jason after he was first born. Suddenly I heard this childish, high-pitched voice say something, and I was astonished that the words were coming out of Billy's mouth, who was 9 then. "Oh my gosh," I exclaimed to Kevin, "that's Billy talking. Listen to his voice." Emotions raced through me as I watched my little boy listen to a voice I'd never hear again, except on recordings. It was a strange feeling indeed. A good friend of mine hasn't changed the message on her answering machine in 3 years because her son recorded it before his voice changed, and she can't bring herself to erase it. It's easy for a mom to get emotional about the passage of time and the physical changes that signify the process of maturity, from the deepening voice to those first few scraggly facial hairs. And last, raising boys is a roller coaster experience, and between those up and down moments are those times that define so clearly to me what it is to be a boy with that innate curiosity and wonder. When Jason was 6, I was standing on the landing of our open foyer doing laundry when I heard something that sounded like spitting. I glanced up to see Jason leaning his head out over the balcony banister, looking down. Shocked, I asked, "Did you just spit over the balcony?" He nodded. At least the boy was honest. "Why?" I asked, disbelieving, too tired to react any more than that. "I wanted to see how long it would take to get to the floor." Raising boys. Need I say more?